Hi, this is Betsy Leatherman with the Leadership Circle, and I'm walking you through the Leadership Circle profile today. The idea is this: between the videos you've watched and this, you should be all set for your debrief with your coach. Now, your coach will also walk you through this information again, but it's helpful for you to hear it in advance. So, the first thing that we want you to be aware of is really what the Leadership Circle is. It is indeed a model for leadership. It also provides a framework for development, and you're probably most familiar with it as an assessment suite. As an assessment suite, you've probably done the Leadership Circle Profile 360, where both you and your peers have rated you. Perhaps you've done the Leadership Circle Cultural Survey. That's where you look at the culture of the organization, the leadership culture. But you may or may not know that it also is a framework for development overall. You and your coach will be talking a little through that when you have your debrief. So let's go into understanding the structure of the Leadership Circle profile. The most primary way that we look at the results are under the creative competencies and the reactive styles, or reactive tendencies, as your coach may call them. The creative competencies are those items that are most associated with leadership effectiveness, and the reactive styles or reactive tendencies are the ways in which we show up as a leader, move to reacting to circumstances versus being conscious and thinking through them. So the first breakdown we look at is the creative competencies versus the reactive tendencies. Next, we look at people versus tasks. Both sides of the circle are inherently connected to one of those. So on the left-hand side, you have people orientation, and on the right-hand side, you have task orientation. When you break those into the various quadrants, they are people creative and task creative, people reactive and task reactive. That's how the structure of the circle breaks down in total. There are 5 core inner dimensions of the creative competencies. The first, relating, is made up of caring connection, fosters team play, collaborator, mentoring and developing, and interpersonal intelligence. Those 5 make up the overall relating score. The next is self-awareness. It is made up of selfless leader, balance, composure, and personal learner. Those 4 make up self-awareness. And then we move to authenticity, made up of integrity and courageous authenticity. Systems awareness, which is made up of community concern, sustainable productivity, and systems thinker. And finally, achieving, which is made up of strategic focus, purposeful and visionary, achieve results, and decisiveness. Those make up all of the creative competencies of the Leadership Circle profile. Next, we'll look at the reactive tendencies. There are 3 primary reactive styles. The first is complying, and that can either show up as conservative, pleasing, belonging, or passive. Then protecting, which can show up as distance, critical, or arrogance. And finally, controlling, which can show up as being autocratic, ambition, driven, or perfect. Those 3 inner circle dimensions, along with their respective outer circle dimensions, make up the reactive styles or reactive tendencies. You've probably noticed that there are both inner and outer circles. When we put the 2 together, they look like this. The inner circle dimensions are made up of the outer circle dimensions. And when you receive your profile results, you'll see a gray bar, that's your self-score, as well as green fans. The fans that you see in green here are what other raters said of you compared to our database. The database we have is 65,000 leaders. They are globally represented and about half and half male and female. We can do customized results by industry, by country, and by various other aspects, For the most part, when you get this report, if it hasn't been looked at in a custom fashion, it is your score, the number, compared to the database, and then you're given a percentile ranking. Let me tell you a little bit about how the percentile scalings work. The idea is this: when you get a score for a particular area, let's say in this case authenticity, you wouldn't really know what a score of 1 to 5 means. So if you got a 3, you would know what it means 1 to 5, but you wouldn't necessarily know what it means compared to other leaders. Because of this, we share percentiles. So let me give you an example. Let's say a raw score was 4.05. That's the average of all the scores in the database from that rater group: boss, peer, direct report, and other. So with all of those scores taken into consideration, someone's raw score is 4.05. But when we compare that to the database, the score is average. So on a scale from 1 to 5, 4 seems kind of high, but in the database, it's right in the middle. And what that percentile means is that half of the people in the database scored higher than you on that particular dimension, and half scored lower on that particular dimension. If you ever get confused about percentiles, the best thing to do is think about when someone has a baby. You hear about the size of the baby, and if you were to hear 9 pounds 11 ounces, you might think, wow, that's a big baby. You're thinking that because you're able to think about all of the weights of babies that you've encountered before, and you would know that's on the high side. In fact, that's about the 99th percentile. If you didn't have that percentile information, it would be harder. So in this case, we don't really know the scores of everybody around us, so we give you that information in comparison to the database. When you get your results, you'll see your scale results on 5 points. So you'll see your self-evaluation, your evaluator's score, your boss's boss if they participated, your boss, peers, direct reports, and others. As long as you have more than 3 in the categories of peers, directs, and others, you'll get breakout reports. In the case of this one that we're looking at, the person only has 1 direct report, so we won't share those scores. But they have 1 boss, and we will share boss's scores. If they had boss's boss and it were just 1, we would also share that. These results look at the actual number 1 to 5. In addition to that, you get the comparison of the norm group. So you'll see the percentile of self, of total evaluators, or breakdown as is appropriate. And you can begin to see the differences in percentile rankings on how people's boss versus peers might see them. Finally, you'll get to see all the results together so that you can see both the percentile as well as the 1 through 5 ranking. Now, as you're going through these, the labels may get a little confusing, and you might think, wow, my boss thinks I'm only 25% relating, as this case shows, with 3.59 as my score. I wonder what those questions were. You can turn right to the back and actually see what the relating questions were to remind yourself of those, so you can check and see, do I agree with that or disagree with that, or is that a place that I might want to have some conversation or look for some more input on that in the written comments and feedback. The same goes for reactive results. You'll get to see those on a percentile rating as well as on the average response number, and of course the questions are in the back so that you can take a look at those as well. There are various additional scales that your coach will walk you through, but one I want to pull out importantly and talk with you about here is the one on the bottom. It's the Leadership Effectiveness Scale. You, as well as your raters, were asked 5 questions in the Leadership Effectiveness Scale. The first is, I am satisfied with the quality of leadership that he or she provides. He or she is the kind of leader that others should aspire to become. He or she is an example of an ideal leader. His or her leadership helps this organization to thrive, and overall, he or she provides very effective leadership. Those questions asked on a 5-point scale and then compared to our database will give you your leadership effectiveness score. One note, the reason we have pulled these out separately in a scale is that they correlate the highest with business results in the research that we've done. In addition to that, they have high, strong correlation to the creative competencies and creative elements as well. So this is the Leadership Effectiveness Scale. Finally, I want to talk just a little bit about opposites and dynamics. One of the most interesting things about the profile is that the opposites really work together almost like a rubber band on a string, if you will. The higher you are in the controlling element, the lower you tend to be in the relating. And in fact, when we look at relating compared to controlling, you can see the higher relating, the lower controlling. This is from a study that we did of about 5,000 scores and looked at people's relating compared to their controlling. You'll see that there's a negative 0.65 correlation between the two. The same holds for protecting versus self-awareness, authenticity, and systems awareness. So the more protecting you are, the less you'll show self-awareness, authenticity, and systems awareness. And indeed, this holds well at a negative correlation of 0.75, negative 0.39, and negative 0.53. And the last one, complying and achieving, functions the same as well. It seems to me that this is a nice one to illustrate this. Within achieving are the outer dimensions around strategy and vision, achieving results, being decisive. You can imagine that it would be hard to be seen as pleasing and also decisive, because to be decisive, in the end, you likely won't be pleasing everyone. And to be purposeful and visionary means that you're probably not being passive or distant. So that's the achieving and complying, and in this one we have a negative 0.76 correlation between the achieving and complying dimensions. I share that with you because as you go through your results with your coach, one of the things I'll ask you to do is actually look across the circle for those areas that will help you as a leader grow and help you really begin to change your leadership in a fundamentally more impactful way. So after all of that, I bet you're really excited to get your debrief. If you have any questions before then, you're welcome to call the customer service number or connect with the project person who's been working with your team. And we hope you enjoy your experience and look forward to supporting you in the understanding of your leadership circle profile.